to touch on those things. Things mathematical are also there, but I would like to talk more about the physics of this particular aspect. And for those of you who would like to correspond with me for some reason, of course, research, you can note down my email ID in this particular page and contact me if necessary. So this is about boundary conditions and their influence on the dynamics of fluids. So I choose a particular example of Rayleigh-Bénard convection in liquids. I'll come to that very soon. So we have two plates, two horizontal plates. So if you see the plates from the sides, you would see two lines, for example. Okay, so the plates are horizontal basically. So there is fluid between the plates. Of course, there has to be boundaries. I have not shown that, vertical boundaries, in order to hold the fluid. And the lower plate is at temperature T naught plus delta T, upper plate is at T naught. If we assume that delta T is greater than 0, then obviously the lower plate is warmer, is more hot than the upper plate. Okay. Now, when I want to study this particular problem, I said the practical situation will involve a vertical boundary. Okay. And when the vertical boundary is involved, much of the simplified maths is gone. So you would get a finite number of roles. The influence of the boundaries would be there. The nature of the boundaries, everything that would be there, the vertical boundaries. And it makes the problem that much more complicated. Okay, I'll explain this particular phrase that the problem becomes complicated towards the end of my talk. So we have two plates of distance h, and lower plate is heated, upper plate is cooled. So I keep on increasing my delta T. Okay, I keep on increasing this delta T. And when I increase the temperature difference between the plates, the temperature difference overcomes the stabilizing factors of viscosity and thermal conductivity. Viscosity essentially opposes the flow. The layer to layer friction is there. So some amount of energy is required to overcome that. And thermal conductivity tries to take away heat from higher temperature to a low temperature. So basically, the friction to the flow and the taking away heat from a higher temperature to a lower temperature um, uh, contributes to the stability of the system. So when once delta T is able to overcome these stabilizing influences, then the fluid unsettles. So instability starts. So the fluid keeps on gaining energy from the lower boundary. So when the temperature difference delta T is enough to overcome the viscosity and thermal conductivity, we see what are called as internal gravity waves. So we get a number of waves at different because it's a stratified fluid now. The temperature is higher at the lower plate, temperature is lower at the upper plate. So there is a difference in temperature, and the density also differs. So the density is less at the near the lower plate, it's more at the upper plate. Now, since this density is less, it is less dense at the lower plate, the fluid there tries to move up. When so the upper plate, near the upper plate, the fluid is dense, so it tries to go down. So that arrangement gives rise to initially what are called as internal gravity waves, and these ultimately break down into these cells. Why should cells form? This is the thing. So when the fluid gains energy at the bottom plate and it's able to overcome viscosity and thermal conductivity, after the breakdown of internal gravity waves, the lighter fluid tries to move up. How it can go up, but how far can it go when it goes up? How far can it go horizontally? As much energy it has, it can go only that far horizontally. So it goes up, goes some distance, loses energy, become denser, falls down. That is the reason why you see these cells of a particular size. There are various influences to these cells. The boundaries are there, the fluid properties themselves also come into picture. When I say the boundaries are there, the properties of the boundaries, I'll get into more detail of this. So the fluid loses energy and falls after some distance, forming a cell. So what you see to the left, the first cell, for example, is a cell which forms because of heating from below. What you see on the right, the counter rotating cells, the clockwise is the one on the left, the counterclockwise is the one on the right. Now, if suppose the second one were also to be clockwise, then at this particular point, that is the interface, to make it clear, I have separated this. At this interface, the two cells rub each other. So if one is coming down, the other is moving up. So it would rub against each other. So some amount of energy would be lost. In nature, fluid always takes the path of least friction. That is the law of nature. So if least friction must be there, then if one is clockwise, the other has to be anti-clockwise. It just falls down, moves up, falls down. So that's what you have counter rotating cells. So the clockwise cell along with the anti-clockwise cell together forms one wavelength. So you see that this particular thing is, suppose I take away the vertical plates, you see an infinite number of such cells between the horizontal boundaries. And this combination of clockwise and anti-clockwise cells, they repeat themselves in that wavelength of lambda. Okay, so 2 pi by lambda, I mean lambda is the wavelength, so it repeats itself in that particular wavelength. Okay, so the h is the difference, so everything is clear. So I'll now move on to this. So when the vertical plates are very far away, they do not influence the dynamics between the plates much, and it allows the mathematics to be simple. Okay, I'll tell you what is meant by simple. See, if keeping the mathematics simple is the only thing, then that will not help. If the results that we obtain from a simplified mathematics allowed in a physical sense, then we get the right results, and that is representative of what is really happening in a practical situation. So with that in mind, in order to enjoy some, when I say simplified mathematics, it is not so simple. It's still difficult. If I were to include the vertical boundaries properly, then the mathematics would be very, very complicated. There are simplified ways of studying vertical walls also. I'll not touch upon that. Okay, that's for a different occasion. So the best book I would suggest to you for boundary conditions is the book on convection in liquids by Platon and Legros. A wonderful book. If you want to work in this particular area, you must read this book. Okay, so this is the book for convection in liquids. There are other books as well, but this is an extremely well written book. Now, coming to types of that is types of velocity boundary conditions. There are two things here. The fluid dynamics is there. There is thermodynamics as well, because heat is involved. We are adding heat at the lower boundary. So thermodynamics is also there. So we require not only the equation for the velocity, we also require the equation for the temperature. So we require the conservation of linear momentum. We also require the conservation of energy. But here, what happens is when you write down the equation of linear momentum and write down the equation of energy, so you would have four equations, but there are four unknowns, the three components of velocity, then one pressure, then one temperature. Density, of course, depends on temperature, so that's not an unknown in that sense. So you have four equations, three from the linear momentum equation, one from the temperature, but you have five unknowns. So to close the equations, in order to have a consistent system, you require what is called as the conservation of mass. Not just for that reason, but you also require the conservation of mass. So assuming this consistent system of five equations in five unknowns, now I have to just look up how to solve them. So there will be a geometry, the boundary conditions are there, the initial conditions are there. If not the boundary conditions and the initial conditions, what are the other conditions we need to have? All these things we'll address very soon. But before I get into all those issues with mathematically, along with the physics behind them, I will first tell you about the different types of velocity boundary conditions. Obviously, I require boundary conditions on velocity, boundary conditions on temperature. Now, when I say a boundary, it really depends on how that boundary is. Now, suppose for those of you who are doing fluid mechanics, suppose you are using, say, a rigid boundary. How? What is meant by that? Apart from arriving at some conditions, what exactly is meant by that? We say it is a stick boundary condition, no slip. Okay. What do you mean by that? Now, suppose I have very smooth boundaries, say something like a mirror finish, then the fluid would never stick that particular boundary because the boundary is very, very smooth. So I cannot, for such a boundary, apply the no slip condition of a rigid boundary condition, okay, of a rigid boundary. So by a rigid boundary, we mean that there is some something rough about it, not very rough, something rough about it, so that there is scope for the fluid to stick to that wall. If it is very smooth, say a mirror finish boundary, then the fluid slips. So you no longer can apply the stick boundary condition. So you require a different type of boundary condition, and that is what is called as a slip boundary condition. I'll come to the details of this very soon again. Now, in the case of rough boundaries, when I say rough boundaries, not rigid. Rigid is not very rough. So the rough boundaries I'm talking about now are boundaries which are quite rough. Some, I mean, though for an approximation we take it to be a plane, there is some roughness which is allowed. Okay, so those rough boundaries are taken care of in two ways. One is based on the slip boundary condition of Beavers and Joseph. The other is by using a stress depth boundary condition of Ochoa and Tapia and Whittaker. Okay, so these two boundary conditions are there. I'm going to talk about one boundary condition. The work on deriving a new boundary condition for the Rayleigh-Bénard convection problem is almost being finalized, and I'll report it very soon. So then we come across rigid boundaries, not very rough, but they are rigid boundaries. They don't allow the fluid to pass through them. Okay, So they allow the fluid to stick to them. So such a boundary condition is called as a rigid boundary. Now let me come to plane free boundaries. Now there can be two types of plane free boundaries: without surface tension, and when you, I mean, without surface tension, and when you do not have surface tension effects brought into the picture. I'll give you the reasons why surface tension can be neglected in some cases. So when you do not have surface tension, we call such a boundary as a stress-free boundary condition. When you have a surface tension boundary condition, then when you have surface tension, you can, to an approximation, have the surface to be a plane, but there is some amount of approximation which is done there. That's not a factual one, because in the case of surface tension, whenever it is present, it does not allow it does not allow the upper free surface to be a plane. There is some amount of deformation. Okay, I'll come to that. Then the third type of free boundaries, when you have surface tension, is what is called as the deformable boundary. When the plane assumption, plane assumption will have to be changed, so we have to consider a deformable surface. So let me start one by one. I talked to you about the very smooth boundaries. In this case, which boundary condition we use? We use the Navier slip boundary condition because it does not allow it to stick. It's a very smooth boundary. Okay. Rough boundaries, what happens is I have to confirm the sign of this, whether it is plus or this is minus. Anyway, that should not one can look into this particular paper by me in the year 1995. The Journal of Magnetism and Magnetic Materials. So when you take rough boundaries, for example, what do I mean by that? The rough boundary can come about by the bounding surface not being just plate. It could be porous media. So when the upper boundary, say, has porous media, layer of porous media, and you have the porous media to be very densely packed with spherical particles, then you can arrange all those spheres in a plane, but there is some roughness involved because of that. It cannot be a perfect plane. So these rough boundaries, these rough boundary conditions can be derived by using the Bevis-Joseph slip boundary condition, and the great details on this particular boundaries is given in this particular paper. There are recent authors who have published this as rough boundaries, but they have not cared to that is reference my paper, which is in fact the first paper on rough boundaries. Another boundary condition, which is instead of the shear, which is the basis for the rough boundaries here based on Bevis and Joseph, in the Ochoa and Tapia, they consider a jump not in the shear, but they consider a jump in the shearing stress. And that boundary condition also gives rise to very interesting possibilities. And I somehow have a feeling that the stress jump boundary condition is more realistic compared to the shear jump boundary condition of Bevis and Joseph. Okay, so this is the boundary condition. So I'll discuss different cases, dA inverse 0, dA inverse infinity, dA inverse finite. We'll discuss all this. Okay. So now if you take rigid boundaries, what does it mean? It's like having a plane, which means they are very closely packed. The spheres which form the upper bounding layers, they are very closely packed. So Darcy number is 0. So if Darcy number is 0, what happens? 1 by dA, that becomes infinity. So invariably dW will have to be 0. Okay, so you'll have a 0 by 0 form there, which makes this finite. So that is the reason why you have dW equal to 0. So with dW equal to 0, dW equal to 0, when I say dW, it is the Z boundary condition, the boundary condition in the vertical direction. Okay, so there is no flow which is allowed from the fluid region to region outside the plate. The plate does not allow this, the rigid boundaries. So very nicely written about, about this boundary condition. Chandrasekhar has written in a very nice way, and there is a lot of clarity on this. You can gain a lot of insight on this boundary condition by referring the book by Chandrasekhar. Of course, he does mention about the other boundary conditions as well, not all the boundary conditions, but some of the boundary conditions. It's an excellent book again, like Platon and Legros. So in the case of plane free boundaries, let me go back. Uh, what happens? So you have dA tending to infinity. Okay, infinitely permeable. So the boundary opens up. It is a free boundary. There is no bounding porous media there. So when dA that is dA goes to what is that? dA goes to d squared W becomes. I'll come back to this. dA goes to 0. D squared W becomes 0. This is also explained in the book by Chandrasekhar. So W equal to 0 and dou squared W by dou Z squared equal to 0, they are surface tension, they are free boundary conditions without surface tension. So these are called as stress-free boundaries. Now, when you have surface tension, the shear that you have, that is to be matched along with the surface tension. So this is the surface tension coefficient. So you have a linear law connecting the surface tension and the temperature. You can find it many places. So once you do the non-dimensional analysis, you non-dimensionalize this equation, so you would get a boundary condition in this form. So Marangoni number contains viscous surface tension effects. So when surface tension effects are not there, so you see the dou squared W by dou Z squared equal to 0. So you get this stress-free boundary condition. Okay. So this is what you have. I wish I had the time to explain more about all these things like surface tension and so on, maybe some other occasion. And of course, you would require a lot of time to explain this deformable boundaries. So, but for a first reading, maybe you can read the paper by Casillo and Velarde. Excellent paper in the Journal of Fluid Mechanics. So far as temperature boundary conditions are concerned, let us take this. If suppose I multiplied this by K, okay, I multiplied this by K, then with a minus sign, dou T by dou Z, minus K dou T by dou Z, that would be nothing but Fourier first law. Okay, so that gives you the flux. So the conductive flux, okay, through whatever boundary, lower or upper, the conductive flux that is directly proportional to the temperature difference between the surrounding and the temperature of the fluid at the boundary. So this, in fact, will have T minus something. Okay, so the scaled one will give you everything. So this Biot number has the thermal conductivity and so on. So Biot number is a non-dimensional coefficient of heat transfer. So Biot number signifies the heat exchange between the fluid and its surrounding. So I'll see the various cases now. Suppose the Biot number is very large. Okay, how large it is depends on the boundaries, how you define your Biot number and so on. But there are classical standard definitions. So you will see that as Biot number, if the Biot numbers are very large, then what happens? Okay, to keep this finite, because the flux will have to be finite at the boundary. So if BIL is infinity, then T has to be 0. So that is what is called as an isothermal boundary condition. Now this temperature T is not temperature at the state when the fluid is at rest. When will the fluid be at rest? The fluid will be at rest when delta T is quite small. When I keep on increasing my delta T, the fluid gains energy and the fluid overturns in the form of nice cells. So the temperature difference delta T, it perturbs all the quantities of the flow. So what are the quantities of the flow? The pressure, the density, the velocity, the temperature, everything. Every quantity gets perturbed. So when I say uh, say a boundary condition, when I say that there is a particular boundary condition, these are with respect to perturbed quantities. So this is what I have. Now suppose I take BIL and BIU to be infinity. Okay, what happens now? Okay, I'm sorry about this. This is 0. BIL and BIU is 0. Then what happens to this? The flux is 0. So there is no transport of heat from the fluid to the solid. So this boundary condition, if I take as it is, say if BIL and BIU are not infinity or 0, then what happens? When it is finite, there is exchange of heat between the fluid and its surrounding. So that gives rise to this boundary condition. When BIL and BIU are finite, so this gives rise to a mixed boundary condition. There is heat exchange between the system and its surrounding. So these boundary conditions are called as Robin boundary conditions, third type boundary conditions. Here, what have we assumed? In discussing about all the boundary conditions, we have assumed that the plates are very, very thin. The surfaces, the plane surfaces are very, very thin. By virtue of that assumption, we do not consider the influence of the solid thermomechanics that is possible within the plate. Because we are assuming it to be wafer thin, we are saying Z equal to 0 is the boundary. We are saying Z equal to H is a boundary. So what does it mean? It's a wafer thin boundary. So because of that assumption, what is happening now? We are assuming that the solid mechanics which is happening within the plate does not influence much. So that is another approximation, a reasonable good approximation. So suppose I consider the boundaries to be thick, then I have to couple the fluid mechanics, the thermodynamics along with the solid mechanics within the plate. Okay, so these are all problems which have been there in the literature. You could just go and see them, that is. I'm very happy to share with you that a very comprehensive paper on the effect of various boundary conditions on the onset of chaos in Rayleigh-Bénard convection is reported in Applied Mathematical Modeling. A very, very important uh, concept of energy conserving Lorentz model, which has been neglected so far by most authors. Of course, has been raised by not just us. Has been raised. It has been there in the literature. You could see them. It is, and those papers have been referenced in our in this particular paper. Very soon, it shall appear in the applied mathematical modeling, and that gives you the details of all the boundary conditions possible in the case of Rayleigh-Bénard convection. It's not just chaos. We have regular motions as well. Anyway, I would I would use this opportunity to highlight one particular thing, especially for the youngsters. Don't be in a hurry to publish papers. Don't be in a hurry to finish off a paper by evening and send it off. Okay, maybe a first paper, maybe a second, maybe a third. Please don't hurry. Please don't publish in some small journals. It will not do you any good in the long run. You should publish in top-notch journals, or at least the second tier journals. You should have some standard. Before you can write a good paper, you should read good papers. Make note, read them a number of times. With lot of effort, this paper would have been written. I think they deserve attention. We must spend time reading those papers and mark on them whatever we learn. So when we read some real good papers, we gain a lot, and then we'll be able to do some good papers. There is no shortcut, that is obvious. So this is what you have. I'm glad that this paper is coming in a very good journal. You should learn all this. What is a Q1 journal? What is SDR, JCR? What is an impact factor? Okay, all these things. There are many other things which are appearing these days, normalized and things. It's here. So you can also see that. Anyway, let me not digress your attention. So I'll again come back to a summary of boundary conditions. So there can be two things. We have two boundaries here. I can take both the boundaries to be free and free. See, when you say free boundary, there is no real plate there. So just think about this. Is this a realistic boundary condition? It is definitely not a realistic. But this boundary condition has been very greatly studied in most of the problems. Nothing wrong. You should know why you are doing that. By making use of the assumption of a free boundary at the upper and lower surface, you are allowing some simplified maths, as I told you. And that qualitatively represents the physical situation in the case of realistic boundaries. So there is an error in prediction, but it does not match quantitatively. That's what I mean. So it's a qualitative prediction which the free boundary conditions they facilitate. Now this again, a free boundary at the bottom and a rigid boundary at the top. Can this be realistic? Think about this. This again cannot be realistic. Okay, you need some plate to hold this. There is just a plain surface. It's not at all some surface holding the fluid. So this is not realistic. So this is also not advisable in a way. Okay. What about this? Yes. See, when I say there is a plate here, just recollect all that I told you. We are not saying that vertical plates are not there. We are saying that the plates are infinitely long and the vertical plates do not influence the major part of the dynamics. Is that clear? So when I have written two cells, does not mean that there are only two cells in this problem. They are only representative. There are a number of cells which are repeated. Okay, so that's what I mean. So this is realistic. The lower rigid and upper boundary free is realistic. What about this rigid and rigid? This is also definitely realistic. Okay. So see here, carefully see, I've written two cells in each, but in effect, there are a number of cells on either side of these two cells. Okay, so I assume infinite plates to just to see that the vertical boundary condition effect I can neglect in my theoretical study. So when I come to the temperature boundary conditions, if the Biot number is infinity, okay, so then in a way, can you guess in terms of thermal conductivity, what is it? If you take Biot number infinity, for example, T equal to 0. So it is the same perturbed temperature throughout the plane. So isothermal, it is the same temperature. Okay, T equal to 0. Now there is some temperature, but that temperature is of which state? It is of the stationary basic state before convection. So here we assume that the boundary conditions are such that conditions are, are zero. So it's the same throughout. Okay. So T equal to 0. So Biot number infinity, what can it mean? Biot number infinity. So you dig into the definition of Biot number. Should thermal conductivity be there because of Fourier first law in the left hand side? Then, so if it is Fourier first law, then thermal conductivity should it be in the denominator or the numerator of Biot law? So you make this thinking must happen. Okay. So you see that these are 4 boundary conditions on temperature which are possible. So what have I done here? In these 3 cases, okay, I have written down 2 cells. Whereas in the case of this situation, I've written only 1 cell. What happens here? In this case, because the boundaries are adiabatic, what do you mean by that? Biot number is 0. There is no exchange of heat between the fluid and the surrounding. So all the energy in this system supplied from the lower boundary by heating the lower boundary, that is available for the system. So the fluid at the bottom raises up. It has more and more of energy being there, not shared with the surrounding, because the boundaries are adiabatic. So the entire energy is available for the formation of a cell. So you would get a very long cell. Okay, that's what it means. So far, so good. So I'll use some acronyms, that is shorthand notation. So when I say lower boundary is rigid isothermal, then that is Ri. When I say upper boundary is rigid isothermal, it is Ri. So if lower boundary is rigid adiabatic, it is Ra. When upper boundary is rigid isothermal, it is Ri. So other things are self-explained. Now let me go back again. I have how many combinations of velocity boundary conditions possible? I have 4. Then I have 4 thermal conditions possible. So with each one of the velocity boundary conditions, I can consider these 4. Okay. So how many boundary combinations can I have now? I can have 16 boundary combinations. So these 16 boundary combinations we are trying to solve now. I'll let out a few things to you. You could explore some very new things in convection. Me and my group, of course, have been doing something on this. You could also do a number of things. I'll explain that to you. I have put a number of references here so that you can refer to them. See, you make it a point to dig out papers from the Journal of Fluid Mechanics, from the Proceedings of Royal Society, and a number of old books. Fortunately, you get a number of books online now. So you dig it out, read it, make notes. You see this paper by Pillu and Southwell, an excellent book. You want to understand Lily-Benard convection in a good way. Nothing like Pillu and Southwell. Okay, it's an excellent book. So there are a number of other papers, Busse diagram, things like that. Different aspects. Yes, I just listed this out for you. You can just go through them. Saltzman is an excellent book, important for what I am doing. So are the papers by Lorenz. These 2 papers, one's in 1963, the other in 1984. This second paper is a generalization of the first one, and this is slightly more involved in 4 dimensions. Anyway, not that it is difficult. So this is one of the very good papers by Curry. These 2 papers. So then you can see the book. See the paper by Roy and Musilak. Excellent paper. Roy, of course, is in the meteorology department in India now. He worked with Musilak. And this paper writes about the energy conserving models, how they have to be done, how we can do the truncations horizontally for the horizontal modes, for the vertical modes, and so on. So truncation that I am essentially doing is for the horizontal modes. So you can see that. Then there are a number of books. Okay, I've referred all this, and you can also think of Rayleigh-Bennet convection as some sort of similar situation. And this paper by Barna and Mathias that gives you the details. I'm yet to read this paper fully, but it's an excellent thing. Certain other aspects of internally heated convection. Internally heated convection is not Rayleigh-Bennet convection. So you could refer those books and see them. So let me come back to the problem now. Okay, I should also keep that because I am known to just forget about time. So what I'll do is I'll quickly go through this. This is regular stuff. So you have a layer of fluid. When I write like this, it only means this upper plate and this lower plate are infinite, and the vertical walls are being neglected. So you have an infinite number of rotating cells. So the gravity is acting vertically downwards, and for a particular range of temperature difference, you see what are called as rules. Okay, I'll discuss about that. I cannot explain everything in detail. Um, uh, these things will have to be gone through, and you can when there are rolls, what you see in the XZ plane, different XZ planes, they are the same. So one could forget about variation with respect to the y coordinate. Then you can use the Oberbeck-Boussinesq approximation that has something to do with the simplification of the equations. It in a way suggests that uh, uh, even a compressible one can be treated as incompressible, okay, in problems like this. So this theory applies equally well for liquids as well as gases. So the Boussinesq approximation will lead to only the density being a function of temperature, and when all other properties are constants, it's called as the Boussinesq approximation. If even one of the other properties becomes a variable, then it is a non-Boussinesq approximation. Small scale convective motion occurs in the system. So you have two terms, Q dot del Q and you have Q dot del T. So it is the temperature which is the reason for the dynamics in this problem. So the temperature, we say that the amplitude pertaining to temperature are dominant over the amplitude pertaining to linear momentum. So one can neglect, for a simple model of convection, one can neglect the inertial term. The lateral bounding walls are quite far apart to influence the dynamics in major part of the fluids. So I told you here you have the conservation of linear momentum, okay, and density is a variable only when multiplied by gravity. At other places, it is a constant. So the reference temperature is T naught, the temperature of the upper plate. So the density at T naught is taken. So you have the viscous shear, the pressure gradient force, the inertial force, the local acceleration, and so on. So how many variables here? Gravity is known. So you have Q, which is the velocity. There are three variables, three components, and pressure. There are four variables. Then temperature is the fifth one. So here three components are there, three equations. This is one equation. So 3 plus 1, that is 4. How many unknowns? 5 unknowns. So you require one more equation that is supplemented by the continuity equation. So equations 1, 2, and 3, there are 5 equations in the 5 unknowns. So they form a consistent system. Number of equations equal to the number of unknowns. So small scale convective motions essentially means the amplitude of the amplitudes concerning the linear momentum, they are quite small. So kappa is the thermal diffusivity, which is conductivity divided by rho Cp. Cp is, of course, and this should be rho naught, I'm sorry. This should be rho naught. Cp is the specific heat at constant pressure. Why to use the specific heat at constant pressure? Why not specific heat at constant volume? These things are also to be looked into in these problems. That one could lecture for quite a long time just on that. So you have density as a function of temperature. So the density is really not a variable. Once you know the temperature, you are able to determine the density. So in the basic state, what happens? The fluid is at rest. Okay, I'm sorry, I should have written Q equal to 0 here, velocity 0. So when the fluid is at rest, what happens? The temperature distribution takes this linear distribution. Okay, it's linear. It's just a line. Okay, and the pressure, which again comes out in terms of rho B, gradient of P is matched by rho Bg. So pressure comes out in terms of a temperature difference. So you get this. Okay, basically in the basic state, the pressure matches with the buoyancy, and it is hydrostatic equilibrium. So when delta T is increased, what happens? The velocity, the pressure, the temperature, all these are perturbed. These 5 quantities are perturbed. And these perturbed quantities are written out as primes. So when you substitute that distribution, I mean, when you substitute the 6, the sum of the basic state quantities with the perturbed quantities, substitute that in the governing equations, eliminate the pressure term by operating curl, then simplifying, you would get an equation like this. Okay. Now, so this zeta that you have is dou u dash by dou z minus dou w by dash by dou x. So that is the vorticity term. Okay. So you have the conservation of vorticity in this equation influenced by temperature, and this is the conservation of heat. So now what I do is I reduce the number of variables again. So I reduce the number of variables. So this since I'm considering a 2-dimensional flow in the xz plane, the u and w, the velocity components in the x and z directions, I'll write down in terms of a stream function. So 2 variables u and w now can be written in terms of psi, means I'm reducing the number of dependent variables by 1. So I non-dimensionalize these quantities. See, why we non-dimensionalize by kappa? Why not by the viscosity, kinematic viscosity? Similarly here, you can do that. There is nothing wrong in doing it. You would get the equations in a different form, but the ultimate conclusions are going to be the same. But suggestively, the thermal diffusivity is used here because it is due to heat that the dynamics occurs. So we give importance to kappa, and it also brings the equations in a particular form, convenient form. So that's the reason. You try out using viscosity, you would get similar results. So I get now 2 equations in the 2 unknowns. Psi is the stream function, theta is the temperature. When I say these are now in the not in the basic state, they are in the perturbed state. So del squared is the Laplacian. So this is the Jacobian term, the standard Jacobian. So I now have how many parameters? I have PR, I have RA. So PR and RA. One should also look into what is called as the Buckingham theorem, which says that the number of parameters which are number of independent parameters in this study can be varied independent of each other is 2. And what are the 2? That is Prandtl number and the Rayleigh number. So you should know, by making use of Buckingham pi theorem, you should be able to decide how many parameters you can have for your problem. It's not difficult to find out. So it's called as the Buckingham pi theorem. So all these boundary conditions I have discussed earlier. In place of W, you see psi here. Then in place of T, you see theta. Okay, so these are stress-free. What do you mean by stress-free? There is no surface tension. Okay, Then this is rigid boundaries, that is stick boundary condition, no slip. Then this is rigid boundaries, that is stick boundary condition, no slip. Then isothermal adiabatic. So let us see this now. So all these boundary conditions. Now what I'll do is, I know the boundary conditions. I know the boundary conditions here. So, so insofar as Z is concerned, what I'll do is, I'll take trial functions. Okay, I'll take trial functions to satisfy the boundary conditions. F1i, what does it come out with? F1i, it comes out with psi, and F2i, it comes with theta. There is also another F3i which comes. I'll shortly show it to you. So for these 16 boundary combinations possible, there are different boundary conditions. So I can use these trial functions by to satisfy the boundary condition. But the problem is, when you choose the trial functions, they are difficult. I mean, you don't get accurate results. So you have to very carefully use these trial functions. You have to use higher and higher order approximations. So here they are. So each one of F1i, F2i, and F3i, they must satisfy the boundary conditions. The choice of F3i is crucial. See, this F1i, F2i, and F3i need not necessarily be derived by the Galerkin. You can derive it by any method that you can use. For example, homotopy analysis method, homotopy perturbation method. You could use the domain decomposition method. Okay. Then you could use, for example, differential transform method, whichever method you are familiar with in solving eigen boundary value problems. Those methods can be used in assuming appropriate values of F1i, F2i, and F3i. So you have to know what the eigenfunctions are now. The eigenfunctions are sine kx, F1iz, cos kx, F2iz. Then as x independent term, which is the convective mode. Okay, so you have to satisfy these inequalities for them. So this is the truncated Fourier. So you'll have a number of terms here. It is the Fourier Galerkin expansion. So these satisfy the boundary conditions. There are 16 conditions. There are 16 different each. For example, I equal to 1, I equal to 2, 3, etc. 16. So you have 16 different boundary combinations. So if I do the usual analysis, so I get a generalized Lorentz model in this particular form. And what are these AIs, AIJs, BIJs, and CIJs? They're all function of the F1I, F1Is, F2Is, and F3Is. Very, very easy. They're simple to do in Mathematica, that is. So, okay, I think I'll go back. So this is essentially like the Lorentz model, but these coefficients are different. So the boundary conditions arise. How do they appear in the Lorentz model? That they appear as different coefficients. So if you take the case of free boundaries, your A1i would be 1, your A2i would be 1, your B1i would be 1, B2i would be 1, B3i would be 1, C1i would be 1, C2i would be 1. So you get the classical Lorentz model. So the boundary conditions affect, I mean, essentially, they contribute as coefficients of the terms in the classical Lorentz model. So they add to this as coefficients. So that's why it's called as a generalized Lorentz model. So let us see the features of the Lorentz model. The symmetry is the same as the classical Lorentz model. The Lorentz model represents dissipative system. It's an Hamiltonian system, not a Lagrangian. Then, so these are the coefficients. So you see in the case of free isothermal, you see this. Okay. So different coefficients for all these different boundary conditions. So you can define a Lyapunov function, and this must be positive definite, but dv by d tau must be less than 0. And by virtue of this restriction, you get a trapping region in the form of an ellipsoid here. Okay, so if you solve the Lorentz model, the trajectories of the Lorentz model, they must fall within an ellipsoid. So now I told you this is a very important thing, energy conserving property of the Lorentz model. So you can define the kinetic energy here. This is one of the velocity components. This is another velocity component. The square of them, the sum of the two squares of the two velocity components, that gives you in the non-dimensional form the kinetic energy. Likewise, the potential energy. Okay. So where theta 1, you can take it from the Fourier-Galerkin expansion. Similarly, theta 2, psi as well. I'm sorry, I should have written out the psi here. Then if I substitute all this, okay, whatever Fourier-Galerkin I used, if I substitute all that, find out the rate of change of energy with time, okay, and take now the dissipationless limit. That is Lagrangian now. No, you're not going to, not an Hamiltonian one. So if I take the dissipationless limit, then what does it mean? Nu going to 0, there is no dissipation. Okay, friction is 0. The Prandtl number is 0. So you get d by deta 1 equal to 0. So that is the, so a characteristic feature of all Lorentz models, you cannot arbitrarily truncate, have a truncated Fourier-Galerkin expansion. You need to look into energy conserving principles. So this in turn would mean d by deta 1 equal to 0 would mean E equal to T plus V equal to constant. That is the energy statement. Sum of kinetic and potential energy equal to 0. Now using the linearized version of the Lorentz model, you can determine the Rayleigh number, and this problem show that the Rayleigh number is of this particular form. These are the contributions from the boundary conditions. So if this sign, if the value of this is greater than 1, what does it mean? Okay, it would mean that it is more than Rayleigh number for that boundary combination, more than that of free isothermal. So several of these things, common sense things one could do with this. So there are a lot of results here. So they match quite well, except this particular thing, which we could have put in a little more effort to make the wave number 0. I told you when both boundaries are adiabatic, what is it that you are seeing? You are seeing that the wave number is 0. So 2 pi by lambda, lambda is the wavelength. So 2 pi by lambda is the wave number. So when lambda is, when a equal to 0, lambda is infinity. So you have a very long cell. Okay, so that is the result of this. Now you can quantify, when you keep on increasing your delta T, the flow is no longer regular. You have irregular motion, chaotic motion, that is, and that can be determined by considering the critical points of the dynamical system. One of the critical points is this. So I make use of the Jacobi matrix pertaining to that critical point, and find out the characteristic equation. And doing some algebra, I can find out the Hop bifurcation point, wherein the regular motion gives way to oscillatory motion. So some scaled quantities, RH, PR, and B, they are the classical quantities of free isothermal, free isothermal. So these are scaled quantities which arise due to the boundary conditions being other than free isothermal, free isothermal. So now this familiar thing, you make phase space and phase plane plots for all the 16 boundary combinations. Well, you get something like this. I don't have the time to analyze all this now. Then you can also do one thing. You can do what is called as a bifurcation diagram. Okay, you could determine what the Hop bifurcation point is, but Hop bifurcation in this problem can be determined analytically. Whereas in this case, uh, suppose you are unable to solve the Lorentz system, so it's possible this another means of obtaining the Hop bifurcation point, and it tells you many things. Okay, these gaps, wide gaps, these that is very thin gap, they all mean something. Okay, that can be very well understood by analyzing various intervals. Um, in fact, we had to plot other things. So that those have been included. But in conclusion, I would just say this. It's possible to make a unified study of all 16 boundary combinations using any weighted resolution method or domain decomposition methods or differential transform method or homotopy method or any method which can be used to find out eigenboundary value. That's a new area now. So you should explore other things. Shooting method and other things are age-old methods are very good, time-tested, fine. But you must try to find out various other methods which can be used in the case of eigenboundary value problems. Use it to arrive at the Lorentz model in some way, and that would give us wonderful results, very close to the real situation. You can make it very accurate. You're all youngsters. You really thrill yourself doing a lot of numerics and computation and trying out various things on the system. So it is a good combination of analytics and numerical studies. You could find out a number of results. So only certain boundary conditions exhibit all the features of the classical Lorentz model. So this is a very general study. It brought me, at least I'm sure, for my co-authors as well. It brought us a lot of happiness, a lot of content, at least to me, that we were able to do something like this and report in a nice journal. So these are my co-authors. Dr. Kanchana, of course, she was my PhD student. 3 years back, she completed. Right now in China, doing a postdoc, completing a postdoc, in fact, and that's a supervisor. So during my visit to Shenzhen, we were able to contemplate this problem and complete it. I stayed there for 2 months, and we were able to complete it. I mean, it was done completed much later, but it was initiated then. And these two visited India a year back, maybe a little more than that, and enjoyed their stay. This is right in front of Taj Mahal. So the work that we shared between us is as beautiful as the Taj Mahal, according to me. And I'm really happy that I'm able to present this work. So I once again urge upon the participants to make a resolve that they're going to publish some good paper, good journals. They're going to resolve that they're going to read some good papers, make a resolution that they're going to note some important points, and ultimately write their own good paper. I'll also share a secret with you. See, when you're beginning, when you're getting initiated, it's not easy to write a good paper all of a sudden. You have to be mentored. Okay. I was very fortunate to have an excellent supervisor. A lot of people used to come to the department, give lectures, and we are exposed. And I was also fortunate enough to travel widely, worldwide, and have friendship with a number of great scholars, great friends, in fact, from whom I learned. I was also able to share what I understood of the problem. It is only by sharing, it is only by teamwork that you will be able to do good work, mind you. Don't work in isolation. Be broad-minded. Whatever you know, you should pass it on. Only then you gain a lot. So with this, I will end this talk, and I will pass on the session to the organizers. Let me just see. Yes. Yes.
Thank you so much, sir, for inviting and enriching the session with the topic boundary condition and their influence on the dynamics on fluid systems.
Yeah.
Sir, you have introduced many books like Convention in Lights, books by Chandrasekhara, and many more books to us. We all get in-depth knowledge about types of velocity boundary conditions, rough boundaries, and various concepts of fluid dynamics in your talk, sir. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Here I am happy to inform you all that our resource person's research scale is research article as 2,324 citations, 28 H index and 61 I-10 index. Thank you very much, sir.
Yeah, I think there are a few questions I'll answer. I mean, there are questions, but I'll answer a few of them. And as I saw yesterday, the time becomes very, very little in order to answer questions. So I would urge upon all the participants, I'll answer a few questions, not that I detest taking questions, but I would urge the participants to just email me about their questions so that I can reply to them in a very detailed. Okay. So I have the question by just a minute. I'll go down. There are so many messages. Mathematically, how do you define a mirror finish boundary and rough boundary? Okay, that is by Tapan Hota. See, as I told you, when you say mirror finish boundary, they're very, very smooth boundaries. So you have slip there. So Navier actually mathematically designed this particular boundary condition. So it is very similar to the BJ slip condition, but it is slightly different in a sense. You have to really derive that. They are very similar to what are called as Safman boundary conditions. Look for Safman boundary conditions. It's again a paper in the Journal of Fluid Mechanics. Safman also writes about the Navier boundary conditions. It's basically very smooth boundaries where the fluid does not stick, it slips. When you say rough boundary, you can classify into two types, as I told you. A very rough boundary, in which case you make use of the Bevis-Joseph condition or the Ochoa Tapia. Very soon you will hear about that boundary condition being used for Rayleigh-Benard convection. And in the case of slightly rough boundaries, you can consider, for example, the rigid boundary condition. So, is it possible to impart the counterfactual fluids and we are free to yes, what physical see, see, as I told you, Lord Rayleigh, in his phenomenal paper, it was a theoretical paper. He wanted to explain some result of Benard. Of course, Benard's results were for surface tension, but um, uh, Lord Rayleigh did not consider surface tension, but he was able to theoretically prove when the instability sets in, and theoretically, qualitatively, he was able to predict all that Benard showed in his experiment. So that is the reason why free boundaries are used. You are very right. When it is a free boundary, it is difficult to have Karthik. Yeah, now Sheelavati, yes. I would suggest that you go through, some good journals, Elsevier or Springer or some Taylor Francis or such other good journals, preferably which have an impact factor, because in the days to come, I really did not bother about publication when I was a student or when I was a teacher. We are talking about all these citations and Scopus and Sci journals, things like that. We are thinking these are being talked about now, so a lot of importance being given to that. So I would say that those journals are fairly good enough, but the top ones are the Physics of Fluids, Journal of Fluid Mechanics, Proceedings of Royal Society, and many other journals. Okay, so you can see that. Can you please explain bio-related? I would require a lot of time. So you please, Padmavati madam, please email me. Oberbeck-Boussinesq, Tirupati Reddy, Oberbeck-Boussinesq and Boussinesq approximations are the same. Okay. Sir, can we use approximation theory? Of course. Shreya, you can use approximation theory in fluid mechanics, and but you'll have to bring in the system into that particular forum. Yes, Syed Biban. What are the advantages with perturbation methods over numerical methods? Perturbation methods will give you results which, if you take good number of terms, they will give you quite accurate results. And when you do a numerical study, you could validate your numerical results with the help of results obtained by perturbation. Again, perturbation methods many a time are qualitative, give qualitative results, and they'll be valid for only small values of the parameters which are present in the problem. Then, okay, which area, Devendra Kumar, which area is most suitable to apply in real life? Real, see, an experimental situation is the real life one, which can be really used. And for example, rigid boundary conditions with both adiabatic is not a physically realistic one. Both rigid, or one, the lower one rigid, the upper one free, and other thermal conditions, they can be used. Vamshi Krishna asked about surface tension boundary condition, but I don't think I can do that here. I would answer him. Please email me about your question. I'll definitely answer that. Then, sir, can you suggest a good book to learn Mathematica or MapleSoft or something? There are so many books. Of course, homotopy analysis methods and homotopy perturbation method. Number of papers have appeared with Mathematica, and they're available. You could get that easily. In fact, if you want on homotopy analysis, just email Liao. You can take my name. I know him very well. And Shijun Liao, his name is. And Ji Huan He, homotopy perturbation method, again from Shanghai. You can email both of them. They are competitors, fierce competition, publishing on a competitive basis and doing some good maths. So you could write to them. They are very nice people. They reply. I know both of them. You can write to them. If you have difficulty, you can get back to them. Okay. Myra, I think I told you why we use free boundary conditions. It's only representative. Qualitatively, you'll get everything. My Google, give me your Google Scholar citation. Oh, that you go to Google Scholar and give PG Siddheshwar, Bangalore University. You'll get my Google Scholar citation. Shruti, I've been reading many papers. Can we identify the classical best papers? It depends on your interest. You'll have to really dig it out. Okay. One gets pearls, one gets gold only when you dig deep. Okay. So, I mean, having said that, you please email me. Let me see what help I can render. Yes. Yeah, some surface tension is not considered, Vignesh Krishna. Yeah, surface tension is not considered because if the temperature differences are very large, then what happens is surface tension effect becomes very, very small, and so one can neglect. But however, it's also possible that the boundaries, the nature of the fluid also is important. So for certain types of fluids, one could neglect, for example, the surface tension. I wish I had the time, because one could talk about surface tension boundary conditions for a very long time. Micropolar fluids, Aishwarya, is a different problem altogether, and you require conservation of angular momentum. In the case of what we have done, the moment of linear momentum is angular momentum. Okay, but in the case of micropolar fluids, conservation of angular momentum will also have to be considered. That's a different ball game. Yeah, bifurcation. See, Aruna. Bifurcation is essentially moving from one dynamical state to another. That's what it characterizes. So, for example, if you take RH, which I mentioned, Hop bifurcation point, what does it signify? From the regular motions that you have, which you normally see, to chaotic motion. So it moves from the regular dynamical state to the chaotic dynamical state. Okay. Yes, this problem can be studied as a boundary layer problem, Shilpa. Um, my email address, I think I shared, Raki. Can we get the PDF file of your discussed paper? Sure. It's appearing very soon. Applied mathematical modeling. Why are many people choosing fluid dynamics as a research topic? I don't know. Maybe you're influenced by your teachers, so you take to that. I was definitely influenced by a teacher of mine, not a teacher of mine, in fact. When I was in IIT Bombay doing my research, I was greatly influenced by one Professor Y.S. Prahlad, from whom I learned a lot of maths. But unfortunately, I did not do my PhD there. My father passed away and I had to return. Anyway, that point is not important. Complex boundary conditions. See, don't think of these as complex boundary conditions. When you don't know some person, you feel that person is difficult to handle. When you associate with him, spend time with him, then you feel comfortable. Boundary conditions are exactly like that, or anything, any concept for that matter. So you have to make a friend of all such thing, and then you learn them better. Yes. Surya, which type of fluid model we have taken, Robin? You can take when there is heat exchange between the fluid and its surrounding, you take a Robin boundary condition. Yeah, groundwater flow, it depends, a different problem altogether, Dr. Maheshwari. And in the case of groundwater, it is basically porous media flows and depends on the nature of porous media. So many of these boundary conditions do not arise because you have lower order differential equations. Okay. Alfonso, Pratibha, I think I mentioned Platon and Legros for boundary conditions. So can you say Al Murugan, best book of mathematical modeling? I mean, I'm immediately unable to take name. You please email me, okay? Sale Murugan, please email me on this. I'll definitely reply to you. Then PG students should learn Surabhi. I think you should learn your fluid mechanics well, your numerics well, mathematical methods well. A bilinear sheet, stretching sheet problem. Yeah, please email me, Purnima, on this. I will reply to you. Yes, Mohana, I think, yes, practical validation of theoretical work is being asked. But you just see our recent papers, then you'll realize what we have done. Thermophysical properties of fluids we include because they are readily available. And when you bring in these thermophysical properties into picture, that makes it more realistic. Once you bring in all these realistic boundary conditions, that makes the problem more realistic. So if you see the uh, papers are difficult to publish these days because we are using the rather simplistic artificial boundary conditions. So it's better to go in for realistic, that is experimental boundary conditions, and make use of practical data available from handbooks, many sources. about the thermophysical property. That makes your problem relevant and up to date. Yes. What is that? Jagdish Kumar, references for atmospheric boundary layer. Please email me. I shall reply you. I don't have something offhand now. Yeah, Sanjeev. If you consider the plate as porous, will the boundary condition on the plate be same as rough boundary condition? Yes, please. It will be that of a rough boundary condition based on Beavers and Joseph, or the stress gem boundary condition of Ochoa and Pia. Yes, I think the other chart basically to tell that, I mean, they are the usual charts. And someone wanting the slide, someone wanting some other clarification. Please feel free to email me, and I shall most certainly reply. In case I don't reply, it means two things. One is I've forgotten to reply, or the second thing is I'm busy. It's mostly the latter. I generally reply my emails. So please remind me again, okay? So that I'll definitely reply. Please don't feel bad to remind. Just think of this. I'm reminding an old man, so just email me, okay?
Thank you.
That is all. I think there is something from Vishnu Ganesh. Yes. Yes. Vishnu Ganesh, Nusselt number correlations with the parameters of the problem. I will give you a very good contact. You contact Dr. Mahantesh from Christ University, who has been doing a number of these multivariate correlations for some time now. You can also refer his papers, Dr. Mahantesh from Christ University. So such correlations are being done by him. And I can also tell you some clue. You can make use of R, the programming language R, to do multivariate correlation. That is all it is. Reynolds number, yes. So if you see the Reynolds number, it comes in force convection, and Rayleigh number arises in the case of free convection. When it is mixed convection, you have both Reynolds number and that is what do you call Rayleigh number. So that's how it is. It depends on the problem. You could also that is yeah, you can also have other types of parameters, which when combined gives you the classical parameters. So you should read a few papers. Everyone seems to be in a hurry to just take a paper and complete within their own paper within a month, and another month they would like to have their papers published already.